Hello, everybody. Good evening and welcome. Excuse me just a minute. Just trying to get myself sorted out. Apologies for the delay getting started. There is a good reason. And the good reason is my second monitor, which normally sits over here, has died. And basically what was happening was it was emitting a really rather annoying hum. And as it was emitting this really rather annoying hum, it was cutting out my internet. So that pretty much put paid to me trying to get started on time. So that is why there was a bit of a delay, so I've had to take out my second monitor, so everything is being done off of this one screen. So I have OBS over here instead of over here. So it's going to be a slightly more challenging show than normal. So you'll have to forgive me this week. I will hope to have a new monitor here by next week. So hopefully, by the time next week's show rolls around, I should have a brand new monitor sat over here and everything will be back to normal. So, yeah, so without any internet, I cannot do the show. So, once I had realized that that was what was causing the problem and why my internet was dropping out, I unplugged my second screen and got rid of it. And as soon as I did that, and not just unplugging it from the computer, but actually unplugging it from the mains. As soon as I turned the mains power off, internet was back, and it was fine. So that's kind of the story of today, unfortunately. So it was just slightly irritating. I'm just trying to resize this a bit so that I can see the chat as well. So yeah, so that's kind of the story, which is really rather irritating. So I apologize for not being ready on time, but managed to get it sorted out, and we have a really pretty good quality stream, which is awesome. So I'm happy, relieved, because otherwise I was not going to do my show. So yeah, so we're gonna have to improvise a little bit. In fact, probably quite extensively. We're gonna have to improvise tonight. So, yeah. Getting between Studio One and everything else, Studio One and back to my normal screen, this screen that you are seeing here is going to be a little bit more clumsy than it has of late. Because it's just going to be awkward. So I'm sorry about that. But anyway, welcome. And as you can see, my mic is coming from the other way. That's the other thing I had to do. Was move my mic because the new monitor that I'm getting to replace it, which I literally have just purchased because I thought I have to do this now, otherwise it's not going to be here in time, is going to be much bigger. So I had to put the mic over the other side. So no, you are not looking at a reverse angle shot. The mic really is the other way around. It's going to take some getting used to, trust me. For me, as much as it is for everybody else, it's going to take some getting used to. So, hopefully it will all work out well as we go down the line. Let me just make sure that I am talking directly into that and not kind of... there we go, that's better. That's better. All right, so who do we have here? We have 18 people here, which is pretty awesome. And Ken Moss is the first in the building, followed by Dwayne, and Bill Shepard, and Kyle Druziak. Mike is here. Let's see. Just Bob is here. Tony is here. Thomas in the Philippines is here as well. Bobby Booth is here. Ken, as I say, is here. Who else? And that's pretty much it that are in the chat. If you are watching and I've not read your name out because you're not in the chat, so you need to get your name into the chat, and the way you can do that is just literally by saying hello. If you smacking the mic, I'm gonna have to get used to this mic being here. If you are, if you're here, you're watching, and I've not mentioned your name, then definitely say hello and ask a question. And particularly if you type at Jonny Lipsham, and it should fill out the rest for you. And then ask you a question after that, then I should see the orange box. Johnny Guy goes over this quite a bit every week. I keep on smacking my mic. He goes over that quite a bit every week to make sure that he doesn't miss questions. And that's a really good way to do it. Although I tend to be, I don't tend to have quite so many people here, so the chat's not going quite so fast. But for those times that it is absolutely racing by, then yes, it's a good idea to do that. So Ehol has just said hello. He says, hey, Johnny. Mikahan is here as well. He says, hello. Hope everyone is well. Yeah, I'm doing pretty well. Doing pretty good. Apart from having a bit of a frustrating time with that second monitor, and got that out of my system, got my internet back up and running, and purchased a new monitor. And I did all of that in the space of about the 7 or 8 minutes or so late that I was. So I've spent the last half an hour trying to figure out why is my internet dying? And then I figured it out, and once I figured it out, I had to move the mic and get everything set up for the future, for having a bigger monitor. So remind me later. Can you expand some more on the dissonance subject we're discussing on Wednesday? Sure. Yes, I most definitely can, Mika. Yeah, dissonance is a fun subject. And I enjoy dissonance a lot. And the more you use it in a kind of controlled manner, the more effective it is. And there's lots of different ways you can use it in order to kind of draw out different emotions, or convey something, a different mood, a different atmosphere. I apologize. I'm going to keep hitting this mic until I get used to it being here. I'm sorry. So yeah, dissonance can be very, very strident and angry sounding. Like that sounds just... If I take off the reverb, that doesn't sound particularly nice, does it? But if I add in a major third, all of a sudden that major seventh interval sounds a little bit more tolerable. And if I put a fifth in there as well. Aha! Now we have a nice sounding major seventh chord. Doesn't sound so bad. Actually sounds quite pleasant, I could start a bossa nova with this. And all of a sudden that doesn't sound so bad at all. So that's one way in which you can use controlled dissonance. And you're making the dissonance a little bit less obvious by surrounding it with other tones that are a little bit more consonant, like a major third is, Major thirds are fine, fifths are fine. That's kind of when it gets a little bit spiky, a bit spicy. So that's kind of one aspect of dissonance. But you can also do, things like this, like, there you've got that major seventh, but you've got it close voiced. Again, adding the third and the fifth kind of makes it a little bit more palatable. Kind of how you resolve the tension within a dissonant sound is what makes it really, really work. So, for example, doing something like this. dissonance there is being resolved by resolving the ninth, which is the B in the A minor chord, down to the A natural. So basically what you're doing to make dissonance really, really work and very, very, be really effective is resolving it in some way, shape or form. That's not to say that you have to resolve it every time. You don't. You can leave such things completely unresolved, like this. All of those are completely unresolved dissonances. Kind of like the way I make the first one work. Is maybe this big dissonance here between the B flat and the E natural. And then there's another one here. There's that horrible kind of sound again. I resolved that one to there, but now I've got a new one on the E flat chord, which I can resolve again. So again, I'm resolving this one. There's the 13th, and I'm resolving it to the 9th of the A flat major 7th chord. E flat 13, 13 resolving downwards. So, you can resolve your dissonances by either resolving them downwards or resolving them upwards, in order to take away that tension. Now, if you just want to do something that is unresolved spice, and you just want it to go, you just want to shock your listener and leave it completely unresolved, then sure, you can do that. You can do, take a C major chord and stick a D flat in the bass. It depends on what you're trying to convey, really. Alrighty, Just Bob says, your kids started school. Are they going or is it virtual? No, they're actually attending their schools now. So they're back and they are away from the house. They're actually in their school building, although they are in temporary classrooms because back in February there was a very, very large fire at their school, and a significant part of the school was completely destroyed. So that is being rebuilt. It's going to be maybe 2, maybe 3 years in the rebuilding. And so my daughter is in the final year at that school. She will be graduating from that school at the end of this academic year. And so she's just started that year. So next June, she will graduate. And she will be on to high school. But while she's in this particular phase of her education, they will be in temporary classrooms. So it's going to be fun sort of fun, I guess. So yeah, so it's nice and quiet around here, which means I can just concentrate on my work for PreSonus and also for running this business, because I still run Jonny Lipsham Studios as a full-time business, and I work my 2 jobs around each other. So, when I'm not doing my work for PreSonus, I am working on stuff for the business. And that means I am doing session work, either on keyboards or bass or vocals, and that kind of stuff, or I'm doing mixing for clients as well. So I work the two jobs around each other, and it works out pretty good. But now the kids are away, it means I can totally focus, and I'm not having to, homeschool the kids as well, because that was kind of, during lockdown, that's what I had to do. I had to homeschool the kids and run a business and work a full-time job with Presonus all at the same time, and something had to give. So the thing that gave was making videos. So video making is going to be coming back. I'm going to be starting that up again over the course of the next few weeks, and just getting some regular videos being uploaded again. It's going to be good. I have missed making videos. I love doing it. It's great fun. So it'll be good to get back to doing that. How does one do dissonance or consonance vocally over normal chords? Very, very easily, in fact. Because, hang on, I'm just trying to give myself some more slack with my headphones. Hang on. I think we're stuck, but so long as we don't have to go too far, we'll be okay. So, for example, if I have a C major chord, I can do... which is kind of what Leonard Bernstein does in Maria in West Side Story. He goes up to that augmented fourth, and then he resolves it up to the fifth. So you can do those kind of melodic devices, Or you can go. Like that, and, go up to the F sharp, leave it hanging if you want to, and then resolve it. Or do something like that. There you go, there's a little bit more dissonance there, but you're resolving it. So you see what I'm doing there? I'm using notes that don't belong to the C major scale. I'm using this F sharp, doesn't belong. I'm using the C sharp a little bit there as well. But the secret is to those kind of non-tonal chord notes, or, well, they don't belong to that key, or they don't belong to that scale, is to resolve them. You can leave them hanging if you want. There's nothing wrong with that. But I would say that you would need to be able to justify it. Otherwise, it's just going to sound odd. If you kind of like do something like this. And you do all of that over a C major chord, You would have to have a good reason for doing that, and just leaving that C sharp unresolved. So yeah, you would need to kind of justify that either with the lyric, or you'd have to justify that with your melodic intent. Where's that going to go? What are you going to do with that C sharp, which now sticks out a little bit like a sore thumb? You can develop that idea, you can develop that concept, by maybe developing that little melodic idea, and then maybe you go to an F major chord and you do the same. And then you resolve that. So you've taken two little pieces of tension, you transposed them, and then you finally resolved it. So you kind of delayed the resolution of that idea, and that can definitely work. So yeah, there are different ways in which you can kind of take a melody and have the melody play the dissonant role rather than within the chords, if you like. Let's see. Lots of what I call smoky darkroom jazz lives on dissonance. Yeah, jazz pretty much does live on dissonance, and the reason it does is because it's built around that relationship of the diminished fifth or augmented fourth, depending upon your outlook on life. Because it's all based around seventh chords of some kind. There's C7, F7, G7, F7, just spelled out by root 7th and 3rd. So, those are the essential building blocks of popular music, jazz, blues, pop songs, rock songs. They have that kind of, those are the bare basic chord tones, if you like. So there's that relationship always going on in popular music. So, but yeah, jazz in particular, kind of extends the augmented fourth to seventh kind of relationship and adds things like 13th, sharp 11th, flat 9s, or sharp 9s, and kind of, ratchets up the dissonance a little bit more. Borrowing from 20th century classical contemporary music, like the music of Stravinsky, Schoenberg, Webern, Berg, people like that, borrowing those kind of harmonic ideas from Western classical music of the mid-20th century, I would guess, bringing that into kind of a more popular kind of context. Mike says, does anyone else hear the Jetsons theme? Or I have no idea. Diego says, can you mix only with headphones? Which one would you recommend if I don't have a treated room? Headphones for mixing are a great idea if you don't have a treated room. I have a treated room, sort of. It's not completely fully treated because we're only here for 3 years. So I basically brought in the treatment that I had in my old room, in which I was in that room for much longer. I was in that room for 11 years. And in this room, we're only here for 3 years. And this is the start of the 3rd year. And so all I did was just put up the treatment from the other room. And it actually does quite well with a lot of the frequencies that are evident in this room. However, bass is always going to be an issue in home studios. Mostly because they're bedrooms. They're not designed for, they're not designed to be acoustically sound, so to speak. It's just the nature of a bedroom or a lounge or, whatever. It's designed for domestic use, not for a recording studio. So when you have those kind of things in mind, then what you need to think about is what you can get, what you can't get past. Like, for example, I have a window over here. Windows are pretty reflective surfaces. And I've also got a mirror at the back there. I can't get past those. Those are endemic to this particular room. And especially as we're renting this place, I can't get rid of that mirror. So I have to live with it. And I have to make the best out of what I have. And so that means that, for some situations, for some work that I do, I'll use headphones. And the ones I'm using, these are the PreSonus HD7s. These are great for mixing on because these are actually semi-open back. If I turn my head slightly, you should be able to see that there are these little vents here. So these are kind of open back, and they're semi-open back because the way we designed these is we designed these to be good for mixing and good for recording. We designed them to be a good general all-round headphone that are, frequency-wise pretty flat. In their frequency response, so they're great for mixing from that point of view, and also, you don't get a big bass build up because because of the open back nature of them. So I recommend open back or semi-open back headphones. These are great. These are cheap but really good. The price point these are exceptional. They are much better than the price point would suggest because they're only like $30-40. But if you can stretch and you've got a reasonable amount of money that you can afford, then, get some Sennheiser ones like the HD 250s or the 650 Pros are exceedingly good for mixing. They are terrific for mixing on. And the great thing about those is, like you point out, Diego, is that they totally take out the room. The room is completely removed from the equation, which means you don't have to worry anymore about, treating your room. So if you're in an untreated room, then these are perfect. Headphones a good set of headphones will do the job for you. However, the downside of mixing on headphones is that you get a little bit of a false sense of the stereo field because, you've got like two speakers stuck to the side of your head, pointing very directly into your ears. So the stereo field is not going to be natural from that point of view. And so, finding things in the balancing things and panning things in the stereo field is going to be harder, more difficult, more challenging on headphones because of, the stereo field being not entirely completely realistic in that sense. Certainly for doing things like panning, maybe get your headphones off your head, turn the volume down nice and low on your speakers so that you have your speakers at a low volume. When you have your speakers at a low volume, the room is less of an issue because the low volume of the audio coming from your speakers is not going to need to travel as far or as fast into your first reflection points, and therefore they'll not rebound quite so much back into your listening position. So the room will be an issue, but a lot less of an issue if you have the volume down nice and low. Kind of just, I would say, just about the same volume as your average conversational volume when you're talking. If you have somebody else in the room, just as you're talking to them, kind of balance your volume of your interface, your main output volume, so that it's kind of around about the same kind of level as your speaking volume. And then that's a good place. You don't need to mix loud anyway. Even in a treated room, you just don't need to mix loud. If you're mixing loud, then, your ears will do two things. First, to protect your ears do something really clever. They compress quite naturally. They compress the audio. It's the first thing to do. The second thing is the low end and the high end will get louder the more you crank the volume. And also, the more you crank the volume, the more they're going to, it's going to come off the walls and get into your listening position. You'll get comb filtering, you'll get standing waves, you'll get all of those issues that you want to try and avoid. So, if you're in an untreated room, have the volume nice and low. And check kind of like your stereo field, and then you can go back to mixing, doing the bulk of your mix on your headphones. So that's a great question, and I gave you, I think, a pretty detailed answer. So I hope that has helped. Let's see. But that's a great question. I do not recommend closed back headphones, by the way, for mixing. For example, these guys, these are the PreSonus HD9s. These are great for recording because, as you can see, completely closed, which means none of the sound is going to escape out the sides. And these are ridiculously good for recording. They are so comfortable. I could wear these for several hours and not even notice I've got them on. So these are a great buy as well if you're after a good pair of headphones for tracking. And by the way, I've done a review video on this channel for both of these. So if you want to see that in a little bit more depth, then you can certainly go check that out. Just Bob says, what if there are no dissonant notes in the music, but you want to add it vocally? Chords C, D, G, and A, for example. What non-tonal notes does a singer need to hit to nail it? Any non-tonal notes. Experiment. The thing you're going to have to work out, if you're just using plain triadic chords, like you say, C, D, G, and A. You're going to have to work out where those non-tonal notes that don't belong to your, because this essentially is essentially in D major, although you're going to the 7, flat 7. So you're going flat 7, 1, 4, 5. But essentially you are in D major. But because you're using that C chord to start with, you can actually bring in the flat 7 of the scale. When you're going between the C and the D. So let's say you kind of... You know, you can actually use that whole scale. And that's, you know, there are two ways of looking at that scale. Seeing as we're thinking about being in the key of D, that would be the D dominant scale, because you've got the flat 7 instead of the, you know, the more normal leading tone, the major 7. Which can actually work quite nicely. So you can certainly use that. I mean, you can think of that as like the D dominant scale, or you can think of that as the Mixolydian. Wait. It's essentially the same kind of scale. And of course the F sharp is correct in the key of D, but when you're on that C chord, you can have your melody starting on the F sharp. So you know that F sharp is perfectly acceptable in the key of D, because it's the third of the scale and it's the third of the key. But when you're on that C chord, it would add a little bit of extra kind of spice because of that interval there. And you can either resolve that up or you can resolve it down. And you can have some fun with those kind of things. So, yeah. If you're going to go for non-tonal kind of dissonances with the vocal melody, make sure you resolve them for the most part. You know, kind of make sure you're kind of resolving those. I mean, you can leave them hanging, but in a pop context, that's not going to sound right. That's just going to sound like, hey, this guy doesn't know how to write melody. Or, hey, this singer doesn't know how to sing. And you don't want that. You know, if you're gonna have dissonance in your music, you know, kind of do it with some deliberate thought. Put some thought into it. What is the purpose of it? Are you just doing it because you can? Or are you doing it because you want to convey something and you want dissonances to land on a particular word or a particular syllable that you want to emphasize? Dissonance will emphasize such things because they stick out. It's the whole point of dissonance. They stick out. They're meant to. So, you know, if you're wanting to convey anger, then yeah, you know, make it as spiky as you can. So, you know, you can do that. You can totally have fun with with using dissonance like that to kind of express anger or something like that. For sure. And you can either do that harmonically or with your melody. You know, if you've got like a major chord, you can have a minor third melody. So yeah, you can totally do those kind of things. Is the 38% rule true concerning the speaker placement? 38%? I'm not sure what that means exactly. But you should certainly be sitting in the apex of an equilateral triangle if you want to be in the correct spot for mixing. And the other thing that is essential is that your setup, your rig, needs to be in the center of the wall. So, and always best if your room is as, close to rectangle as possible. Like this is a rectangular room. So the best thing I can do for a space like this is to make sure that I am set up on the short wall with the speakers firing down the long wall. And the reason why you do that is because bass frequencies have a lot longer to go. A 40 cycles per second low E string on a bass guitar is something like 17 or 18 feet long. So ideally, you want to be able to allow that wavelength to have time and space to run out or get close to running out. Like, I mean, this is 13 feet to the back here. So that E string that I was talking about, that 40 hertz wave, it is going to hit the back of the wall before it that back wall back there. It's going to hit that before it runs out of energy, and then it's going to start to come back. It's going to start to reflect. It's going to bounce back. And that's where bass trapping comes in handy. Or you can just stuff a whole bunch of gear in the corner like I've done there, which is going to break that up a little bit. But yeah, that's the purpose of bass trapping, is to help with that. But you want to be on the long wall to give the sound room to move, room to breathe, so that it's not going to come immediately back at you and create phase cancellation, which you definitely do not want. So you need to be set up in, I think it's what Francis Buckley always says, take advantage of the symmetry of your room. So get your rig in the center of your wall. That way, your speakers are the same distance from the side walls. So if in this case I have 10.5, nearly 11 feet this way between the two side walls here, I need to make sure that the distance between my speakers to the side walls, both of them, are exactly the same, so that my speakers are the same distance away from that wall. And then what that will do is that will allow room to breathe, and also it will make sure that I have a good stereo image. Now, the other thing that's important, and for most rooms, you're not going to be able to do the 38% rule, which is basically setting up kind of in the first third. If you divide the room into 3/3, kind of being set up in that first third and having that kind of distance from the back wall to where you're sitting is not going to be possible for most rooms. It just isn't. And so you're going to have to improvise. It's not always going to be possible. Now, kind of what we would call professional studios. I hate that. I hate referring to them like that, because a home studio can be a professional studio. It absolutely can. Because it's not about the room. It's about how you, as the mix engineer, make use of that room, and how you go about applying your skills to making music in that room. And, are your clients happy with your work and are happy to pay you for your work? If they are, then yes, you are a professional studio. But, there are purpose-built spaces that are specifically acoustically designed And those rooms tend to follow that 38% rule. And that is built into the design of those rooms. That's different to working in a home studio space. In a home studio space, if you've got the space to be able to apply that 38% rule, do it. But if you don't, then the best advice I can give you is do the best you can with the room that you have. Now, if I was to move my desk back so that it was following that 38% rule, my desk would be in the middle of the room. Which I don't want to do. I don't want to be close to dead center in my room, because dead center in my room is not a great place to be mixing in. So I do have it pulled away slightly from the back wall. I have about 1.5 feet between the back of my speakers and the wall, and that's about all I have. And it works for me, because the most important thing you can do when you first set up in a room for the first time is, before you start mixing anything, is make sure that you play records that you know, and you know what the mixes on those records sound like. Play them on those speakers in your room and use those familiar records to help you learn what the room sounds like, so you can learn to adapt to it, and you can learn what the room sounds like, and therefore you can learn what you need to do to compensate for the quirks of the room. So a good record I would choose, and you do not have to be a fan of this at all, but I recommend it because of the quality of the engineering involved in making this record, and that would be Donald Fagen's The Nightfly. It's one of the best mixed and best mastered records in the business. And you don't have to be a Donald Fagen fan, but I tell you this, learn what that record sounds like on a set of, just regular home stereo speakers, and then bring that into your room, put it on your speakers, and learn what the Nightfly sounds like on your speakers in that room. And then once you have learned that, and you have that sound embedded in your mind, in your ears, in your heart, when you're mixing, you'll be in a better position to get really, really great mixes that translate well out of your room, because you know what great mixes sound like in your room. My colleague, my great friend, Joe Gilder, talked about this just the other week, and pretty much said very much the same kind of thing. He didn't cite a specific record, but it doesn't have to be the Nightfly, but I'm recommending the Nightfly to you because it is such a well recorded, mixed, and mastered record that you cannot go wrong with it. Just learn what that record sounds like on a good set of speakers, and then learn what it sounds like on your speakers in your space. Play record, says John Lake. You know what I mean. Doesn't have to be the vinyl version, can be the CD version, it can be the downloadable version. You know what I mean. So yeah, I hope that helps. Just Bob says, so basically a Robert Plant flat note that he usually resolves and always owns is a good example then. His flats, everyone says, well, that's Robert Plant, and he's loved vocally. If he's bending notes are a different kettle of fish altogether. And yeah, they can be really, really effective. But also, those odd notes, those notes that don't seem to belong to the chord, they can be really, really effective as well. Like I said, kind of like, Sting does it as well, are some notes there that don't belong. That's a G chord with a C sharp, the flat 5, which I then resolved. And then the major 7th, that does belong. But I could also have done this. There you go, down to the flat 9. Up to the natural 9, and then resolve to the major 3rd. All of those will work. It's how you do it that matters. Peter Brooks says, Nightfly, Donald Fagen. Yes. I grew up listening to that record, but that's not why I recommend it. I recommend it because of the quality of the mixing and the quality of the mastering. Because it's just brilliant Grammy award-winning production from start to finish. That record is. So you can absolutely trust that if you use the Nightfly as a reference for what good sounds like in your room on your speakers, you can't go too terribly far wrong. Mike says, what's a CD? True. Very true, Lots of young folk these days have no idea what those things are. And you show them, they're just like, what the hell does that do? And then you show them, and you go, oh, you have to put it into a tray, and you have to push the tray in, and you have to press play. That's too much work. That's too many things to do just to get music. My kids tell me that all the time. So we have 5 minutes left, so I will take maybe 2 more questions. Or am I going to do 2, or am I going to do 2? I'm going to have to get used to this. As I say, I keep smacking the mic because I'm not used to it being here on this side of me. And yes, Bob, I still listen to 78s as well. I have a turntable. It's in the lounge. And I have that rigged up to a pair of speakers and an amplifier that are about 50 years old. And they still sound incredible. It's a valve amp. And it goes to a pair of Celestion speakers that are, I think they are... I'm trying to think what the size of those were. I think they're 15 inches. I think they're Celestion 15s, if memory serves. I'll have to go and check, but I'm pretty sure they're 15-inch speakers. And they sound really, really good. The low end on those speakers is fantastic. The balance, actually, between the whole frequency spectrum is really good on Celestion speakers, because they're really high-quality hi-fi speakers from the late 1970s. And they're extremely well made. Nothing is hyped on those particularly. If my Persona speakers blew up, I would probably get my Celestions in here and mix on those, to be honest. But hopefully my Persona speakers will not blow up. So, yeah, I will take a couple more questions and then we will wrap for the night. Hopefully, as I say, next week, I'll have my new monitor in here, and doing this show will be a lot easier. I'm looking forward to that very much, because it's just weird not having a second screen. Let's see. Oh, wow. Bob says, my Victrola is hand-cranked, spring-operated, and has 2 doors to open and close to raise and lower volume. 1918. Good grief. That is a serious antique. Good grief. A First World War hand-cranked record player. Wow. Gramophone, I guess you would call it. Yeah. Wow. I mean, I thought my late 19... I had a turntable for a while that was... Oh gosh, it would be early 1960s. It would be like 1962, 1963. And that came with an Avalon valve amp. which I think was 1963, 64-ish. And I thought, wow, that was an antique. But yeah, in 1918, anything from that period, from yeah, you've really grabbed my interest now. Because, being a music historian, one of the things that I'm really passionate about is the history of the development of recording technology and recording techniques and capturing audio over the years, and how it developed from, things like iron filings and tin foil way back in the 1880s, all the way through to kind of Edison's experiments with wax cylinders and that kind of thing. So, when a lot of people say, hey, Thomas Edison was the first person to record sound, no, he wasn't. In France, there were experiments going on in the late 1850s and 1860s with capturing audio and trying to record sound of spoken word. And there is, I think somewhere on YouTube, there's a fantastic lecture given on the history of the earliest recorded sounds. And the recordings, they sound, by modern standards, they sound horrific. The quality is just appalling. But for that time, it was just amazing that you could actually record something and then play it back. And so developing techniques, developing ways to actually capture the sound and also be able to edit it later is something that I'm really passionate about. The Nightfly 1982, digital recorded. Yes, it was, Seek Freak. It absolutely was. It was recorded on a 3M digital console, and yeah, that's how they made that record. And I believe even Steely Dan's Gaucho, which was their last album from their classic period, their first period, some of that was recorded on the 3M as well. And there were certainly digital aspects of that record. For example, Roger Nichols, the recording engineer and inventor, invented a drum machine, the very first drum machine, called Wendell. And Wendell won a Grammy all of his own for his performance on Gaucho for Steely Dan, which is pretty impressive. That essentially a drum robot, a drum computer, I guess it was, that Roger built for playing back drum samples. I mean, basically, Roger Nichols invented what we now call, hey, let's just either blend some drum samples with the real recordings that we've done, or something like Slate Trigger. Roger Nichols invented that. And now, Stephen Slate and others have made it phenomenally easy to just do this thing very, very easily of replacing real drums with samples. But yeah, Roger Nichols was the first one to invent that kind of stuff. Digital recorded in 1918. No, there was no digital recording in 1918. It was all done certainly in 1918, wax cylinders and iron filings and tin foil were, kind of, resources used for attempting to make recordings. And then, they would print, well, we would call it printing now, but they would record them directly to an acetate back in, the late teens and beginnings of the 20s. For example, Louis Armstrong and his Hot Five, when they went into a studio to record, there was a gramophone in the studio, but it was a reverse gramophone. Instead of playing back audio, it captured the audio, and the stylus cut that audio into the acetate and made an acetate master. The acetate master was then used to stamp vinyls for mass production. And one of the reasons why those early Hot 5 recordings don't have a bass on it is because the upright bass would make the cutting stylus jump. So they had to get around that, and so the way they got around that was they made the bass player play banjo, and they got a tuba player in, or a sousaphone player, something like that, that would not make the cutting stylus jump, rather. So, yeah, and it wasn't until, kind of late into the 1920s that they discovered that you could actually electrically record rather than physically record your master, and that's when microphones really became the thing to use to record. And of course, there was no longer a necessity for a cutting stylus, and so they solved that problem. And so you could, bass player who had been chucked onto the banjo, he could get rid of his banjo and go back to his bass. And so the later recordings from Louis Armstrong's period have a bass in them. And of course, any of the Duke Ellington recordings and Count Basie Orchestra recordings from the late 20s, early 1930s were done that way as well. So there you go. I know a bit about recording music history. Dave's Gruesome Mountain Dance was the first fully digital jazz recording. I think that was 1978 or 79. Yes, it was 1979, in fact. I'm not sure that it was completely DDD, like digital recording. I think it was certainly digitally mixed and mastered, but I don't believe it was digitally recorded. I could be wrong about that, but I'm fairly confident that it was recorded on an SSL console or a Neve. I can't remember which, unfortunately. But I think it was recorded analog and then mixed and mastered digitally, as far as I can remember. But yeah, so there you go. Alrighty, we are 6 minutes over, and Just Bob is talking my language about early recordings, about Blind Lemon Jefferson and Charlie Patton. Awesome. I do have some acetates. I have some acetates of Charlie Parker and Dizzy Gillespie from recording sessions that took place during the recording band, the official recording band that took place in between 1942 and 1945. That's one thing I do have in my collection of stuff that is very, very rare. And they are incredibly valuable and incredibly expensive because there were very, very few of them in circulation. And I happen to have one or two of them. So, yeah, I am able to kind of have music that charts that period during the development of bebop that was never recorded. So when bebop emerged on the scene, fully fledged, it smacked everybody in the face in 1945 when those first bebop recordings came out, because bebop just suddenly sprung on the world fully formed, because it had been in development from 1941, late 1941, early 1942 at places like Minton's Playhouse and some of the clubs on 52nd Street during that period, and of course they were never recorded officially, unless your name is Ross Russell and you happen to have one of the first tape machines, portable tape machines, and you can capture all that stuff. And he did, and he made acetate prints of those recordings. So there you go. All right, we're going to call it there, folks, but thank you very, very much for coming. We have had, I think we peaked at around about 26, which is pretty good, but we've held fast in the 20s all evening, which is pretty good considering I only put the advertisement out about an hour and a half before the show. But yeah, thank you ever so much, everybody, for coming, and I will see you all next week, and I will have something a little bit more planned, and so if you have a suggestion for the show next week that you or a particular question that you would like me to cover right off the bat to start the show next week, then please email me, Jonny at johnnylipshamstudios.co.uk, and I would like to compile a nice full list of all your questions and all the things and all the topics that you guys would like me to cover. So please do email me, and I can do that so that I make sure that your questions, your subjects get covered, and the things that you want to learn get covered, rather than me just going, hey, why don't I talk about this? And you guys, going, yeah, okay, that's good, but that's not what I'm really that interested in. So, okay, email me, Jonny at johnnylipshamstudios.co.uk. Go check out my website. The website address is below me there. Hang on. Yep, there. Go check that out. And when you go on the homepage, there's a red button there that says Get My Course Now. And you can bag yourself a free compression course that I shot earlier this year. To replace the one that's on my YouTube channel, which I took off because it was old and tired. And it needed a new one, and I figured, hey, rather than putting it on YouTube, put it up on my website, and you guys can go and get it by clicking that red button. All right, so go grab yourself that free course and email me, and I will see you next week. Good night.